All right, let's do a little tutoring real quick so that you can feel awesome about yourself and this test coming up. So, real quick, the whole point of this unit was about energy and how we get energy and how we process energy, how we transport energy. So, the story is what's the origin of all energy for life? And it's the sun. And basically, what we say is the sun, the rays from the sun are absorbed by leaves. That's a leaf. Awesome picture. And if we zoom in on the cells, plant cells that are on there, they have lots of this organelle, chloroplasts. And to recognize a chloroplast, you'll see these stacks that look like this. And they absorb that sunlight, a little something something from the air called carbon dioxide, and they also take in water. So basically, the way photosynthesis works is the sun's energy will break up these the bonds between all these letters. We're simplifying now. There's a lot of like really crazy stuff that happens in the chloroplast. But what we need to know is that these are the reactants, okay, the reactants that go into the chloroplast, and the main product is glucose, which is delicious. This is sugar, C6H12O6, and that's glucose. And then as waste, the chloroplast will throw out oxygen. So this is in picture form, but we know that we also learned it as a formula like this. There's a couple of ways you can draw it. Usually there's either 3 lines with pluses, or we can actually write the solar energy over this arrow. And the same thing, we say we have carbon dioxide and we've got water. The sun's energy is used to make H12O6, and waste is O2. Don't worry about balancing the formula for now. That was kind of in our last test, so just know the gist of what's going in and what's coming out. So then we said that's what plants do. And what's great is we take what plants make, and also plants do this too, but we use glucose to make ATP. And we said ATP is kind of like our energy, it's the cell's energy. Okay, so we use glucose to make ATP. It's called ATP because there's 3 phosphates, 3 P's like this. And in this bond right here, this high energy bond, there's a lot of energy that's stored. So ATP, so the formula for this is cellular respiration I'm talking about. And cellular respiration takes place in the mitochondria. And the mitochondria are found both in plants and animals. And so in diagram form, oh my gosh, look at that picture. Let me start over. Hold on. I go too fast. So I'm going to erase this and go a little slower here. Looks like a bean. And then you'll always see these kind of, because the mitochondria has all this, like these skin folds. And same thing, diagram form now, instead of 3 things going in, if you notice here in photosynthesis, it's 3 things going in. Basically, cellular respiration is backwards. So 2 things are going to go in. And the 2 things are glucose, or C6H12O6, and oxygen. And our whole point is to remember, make ATP. That's the product we're looking for. And what's cool is we also make water. And the waste, which we throw out, is CO2. Okay. Remember, plants do this as well. So if you look inside a leaf, they also have, if you go zoom in, they also have mitochondria that are performing cellular respiration. So they have both. We only have this one. We don't have a chloroplast. So in formula form, that looks like this. Remember, it's backwards. So C6H12O6 plus oxygen gives us water, like we said. Water is H2O. My gosh. CO2 is waste, and ATP. Okay. Now, when we talked about ATP, we basically remember we said that ATP is called ATP because it's made up of 3 phosphates. Okay. 3 phosphates. So ATP sort of works like in a little cycle like this. ATP, P, adenosine triphosphate will snap off a bond, like we said, and this releases energy. And that makes the cell, it's able to do work. But right here, we snapped off this bomb, pow, and we're left with ADP. And ADP is adenosine diphosphate, which means 2 phosphates. And basically what we do is we use glucose to rebuild with cellular respiration. This is where cellular respiration takes place. We rebuild that last bond right here. We'll make it like a little dotted line, which continues the cycle. So glucose is used to rebuild ATP from ADP. Okay, cool. So that was that. Next, let's see what we got. Digestive system. Awesome. So in the digestive system, we start off with the mouth. We started talking about, let me go back to the whole point. The whole point is, after we talked about energy, we said, in order for our cells to perform cellular respiration, we said we need 2 things. The 2 things are glucose and oxygen. So we basically said, what systems in our body get these things? Well, when we eat, the digestive system is what processes glucose so that we can have it in our blood. And the respiratory system processes oxygen, gets oxygen into our blood. And then the transport system is the circulatory system. So that's why we talked about all 3 systems, because they're sort of related to getting our cells fed the 2 things we need for cellular respiration. So let's start off in the mouth. Basically, the digestive system pathway as we go to mouth, where there's mechanical and chemical digestion. Mechanical digestion is your teeth chewing, and chemical digestion is your saliva, which has enzymes in it, which break up starch. This occurs when you chew. Basically, both types of digestion occur, mechanical and chemical. And then you swallow a bolus, which is the ball of food you make. When you swallow your ball of food, the epiglottis is actually what closes the trachea. This tube right here is the trachea. So you swallow your food. Food travels down by peristalsis, which are the wave concentrations that go down. We also have sphincters, which are which pinch off. We have a sphincter that borders each of the organs that controls the movement of food. And so basically food comes down into the stomach. And in the stomach, we also have chemical and mechanical digestion. So when your food is in here, it gets churned, which means mixed. That's the mechanical. And there's very strong stomach acids, which occur in the stomach. After that, the food moves down to the duodenum right here. And this is the first section of the small intestine, and 2 organs act in this area. First of all, the pancreas neutralizes the stomach acids that are coming down from the stomach so that you don't get all burned up in here. And your liver makes bile, and bile basically is like soap. It breaks up fats. So all that stuff is happening in here, this chemical digestion in the duodenum. And then your gallbladder stores bile, if you remember. And remember, we said you can live without a gallbladder because your liver still makes bile. Your gallbladder only stores it. So the food travels down the small intestine, and inside your small intestine, you have little finger-like projections called villi. And those little fingers have blood inside. Let's grab some blood over here. They have little capillaries. And so the capillaries are inside your villi. So when glucose and stuff comes around, it gets diffused into your blood and takes off to all your cells. Okay, so that happens in the small intestine. Food that can't be digested goes into the large intestine. That's here. It's also known as the colon. It's the large intestine, and that guy goes all the way around. And inside here, we have a lot of bacteria, which help break down your food even further. And we said, remember, the bacteria make a lot of gas, which is why you toot smelly gas, because of the bacteria breaking down your bean shells. And the large intestine also absorbs excess water, which makes your waste solid. Couple of problems we said, like if your body has food poisoning, it'll try to expel that food too fast, and so you'll have diarrhea. And if you're constipated, constipation we said was when the large intestine is absorbing too much water. And we use a laxative. Laxative was a remedy for that. Laxative. Cool. So that's pretty much the gist of the digestive system. Just to go back really quick, we know the shapes of our teeth. So incisors or cutters. We have, canines, which can rip. And we have molars, which are great at mashing, grinding and mashing the food. So herbivores have a lot of molars. Carnivores have canines. And incisors are found in both, but mostly herbivores can rip off pieces of stuff. Cool. Great, that's digestive. Let's go to the respiratory system. Respiratory system starts off in the nasal cavity. Nasal cavity has cilia and mucus in there. And the job of that is to sort of trap any particles that are inside the dust that you breathe in, preventing it from getting into our lungs. So the nasal cavity starts off, this is where you breathe in your air. In order to get air in, you have the diaphragm. The diaphragm is a large muscle at the bottom underneath your lungs. And basically the muscle, you can feel it. When you take one breath in, that muscle pulls down and actually draws air into your lungs because it actually creates more space in your lungs here. So that's how we breathe in. So as soon as the air goes in, if you notice, the epiglottis now is open. We took a quick look inside your larynx, which is your voice box. And remember, when we look down it, it actually has two sort of looks to it. While I'm talking right now, my larynx looks like this. The muscles are closed and there's a little bit of air getting through this opening in the middle. If you're sitting there just breathing, you can sort of see the tube like this. This one's open. That means the person's not talking. And this one's closed. That means the person is talking. This epiglottis right here, remember, is the flap that closes your trachea. So anytime you swallow food is going down the esophagus in the back. And right here, the epiglottis is protecting your trachea. This tube right here is the trachea, and that brings air down, which gets separated into the bronchi to either side into smaller bronchioles, and the very end is this guy, the alveoli. But basically right here is the end of a bronchiole, and it branches out into these grape-like little dudes. And what's great is here comes the oxygen, which builds up. And surrounding the alveoli are capillaries, which are tiny blood vessels. And so this oxygen there's high concentration, goes into your deoxygenated blood, goes into low concentration, and basically the oxygen just diffuses into your blood and takes off to all your cells, okay? Now, so that's the red part in this diagram. This is oxygenated blood is starting to fill up, and it's going back to the heart, okay? This blue blood right here, this deoxygenated blood, well, that's emptying out also into the alveoli, but it's emptying out CO2 because that's built up in the blood, and so that's going to diffuse out, and that'll be what you breathe out, okay? So this is the respiratory system. We quickly talked about some disorders like asthma and pneumonia and stuff like that, but we won't have that on the test, okay? So that is that. All right, circulatory system. We'll show you, we have a heart picture, but quickly let's talk about what the whole point is here. So the point of the circulatory system is to transport basically clean blood to all your body cells and then return dirty blood back to your heart so it can get cleaned in your lungs. So what do I mean by dirty or clean? We said oxygenated blood versus deoxygenated blood. This one's filled with CO2 and this one's filled with O2. Okay, this one's usually red and this one's blue in diagrams, not in real life. Remember, we said that. So with any diagram, you can start anywhere. It seems like this guy started here in the right ventricle. And basically what happens is this blood has just returned from the body. It's already used up and dirty because it looks like these cut off legs used it all up. And so that blood is returning to the heart. You know what? I'm going to start here. Who cares about their numbers? After you run up the stairs, your cells are building up CO2. And so that's deoxygenated blood that's going up this tube. This is the vena cava, and that basically is returning blood from your legs. This right here, all this cells, your whole body is like used up all the oxygen, and that's returning from the superior vena cava, also known as the anterior vena cava. But that is sort of bringing blood down into this right here, which is your your right atrium. The right atrium goes down to the right ventricle. This pumps out to the pulmonary artery. We know it's an artery because it's going away. And it's pulmonary because pulmonary means lungs. So that's involved with the lungs. So this is going to your lung. That blood gets cleaned up in your lung, and now it has oxygen. It's oxygenated. So it's coming back down the pulmonary vein because veins bring blood back. Notice some people think that veins are all blue and always deoxygenated, but this vein is fresh, clean blood. Okay. That enters your left atrium, and that will go down to your left ventricle, which pumps it out your aorta. Now, your aorta either brings blood up to your head or brings clean blood down to the rest of your body. And that's the end of the cycle. This cycle down here, which is heart to body, back to heart, is called systemic circulation. Okay. And this heart going to the lungs and, that's the body up there in this diagram. Heart going to lung and going back to the heart. So from heart to lung to heart, that's called pulmonary circulation. Okay, so those are the two circuits that are going on in the body.